I think what would be suitable at this moment is to give a big round of applause for all of our World War II veterans. We owe a lot to these guys. We owe a lot to these guys. Thank you very much. And there are World War II veterans all around. Thanks very much. My name is Hunter Cheney. I'm the Director of Marketing for the Collings Foundation, and welcome to the Collings Foundation. Your participation in this unique event is one of the ways that you're supporting our Living History program, so we thank you. And for those of you who have visited the Collings Foundation for the first time, just kind of a quick history of what we are. We're a kind of a unique educational nonprofit. We were founded in 1979, and our goal, our purpose in the foundation is to enable Americans to learn more about our history, to learn more about our heritage through direct participation. And as educators across the board, one of the greatest challenges we have, particularly today, is how do we engage people in World War II history? It's estimated that over 70 to 90 million people died as a result of this conflict. Worst conflict in human history. This generation, like the generations behind this generation, the generations in front of us, will eventually go away. What these men and women, what our country did, what happened during this war is something that is so vitally important to be remembered. One of the ways that we had found to honor our World War II veterans and to engage people in a tactile history lesson is what started the National Wings of Freedom Tour. This tour that we have features a B-17 Flying Fortress, a B-24 Liberator, and a P-51 Mustang, a variety of other World War II aircraft. For 23 years consecutively now, this tour has traveled to over 110 cities annually. So it's a tour that's seen by close to 4.5 to 5 million people every year. So it's kind of fun. We're much more known for our national programs than we are for the foundation here. And of course, if it's your first time here, 10 points to Gryffindor for finding the place to start with. We're really hidden away. And the foundation, we have over 25 historic aircraft that range from one of the oldest flying aircraft in the United States to the only civilian-owned and operated F-4 Phantom jet. Now, this event was organized to help people better understand World War II. And the war was fought primarily for one thing: freedom. The quality of state of being free. The liberation from slavery, a restraint from the power of another. Men and women fought. Men and women made the ultimate sacrifice for this one thing. Americans entered World War II and turned the tide of impending oppression and suffering. Men entered service and fought to preserve the freedoms that we all enjoy today. The ability to express our individualities, to question and challenge our leaders, the ability to vote. This is why I'm honored to introduce to you these men who served during World War II. We're going to start with Mr. Frank Curry, who was 30th Infantry automatic rifleman and Medal of Honor recipient. And we're very happy today to have Mr. Irving Lerner with us, who has a special bond with Mr. Curry. He's also in the 30th Infantry. Mr. Alan Josie, second-class electrician on the USS Hornet. And Mr. Jack Judge, 181st Infantry, 4th Armored Division. So we'll start with Mr. Curry.
Now, what I want to do first is just give you a little history of World War II with a Medal of Honor. Basically, I am from the mountains of New York State, a little town there called Ferndale, which I assume 99.5% of you folks have never heard of. Okay, I went in the Army when I was 17, and consequently through training I wound up with the Medal of Honor, of which I will go into reveal, but first the history of the medal. And I'm speaking now only of World War II. In World War II, we had approximately 250 recipients of the Medal of Honor. Of that 250, 60% were posthumous. That means that roughly around 125 plus, we survived World War II and received the medal. Today, there are 12 of us alive, of which I am the youngest. So I can have this distinction saying I'm the youngest recipient of the Medal of Honor of World War II. So, you who have read my citation know it was the 21st of December, 1944. It was called the Battle of the Bulge, and it was in the Ardennes forest in Belgium. We were at that time, I was with the 30th Division. We were stationed in the Netherlands waiting to assault and cross the Roer River just before the Rhine River. Well, about the 17th of December, 1944, the Germans broke through our lines. And how they did it, I don't know, because we had Army intelligence. But the Germans formed a whole army under our nose, and we did not know it. So I always figured after that, Army intelligence had to be an oxymoron. But anyhow, they broke through. They picked a line that was very thinly defended down in Belgium into Luxembourg, and they broke through. Leading the German advance was the 1st SS Panzer Division, or what they call Hitler's Own. It was probably the most unique unit in the German army. They broke through, so they quickly pulled us down from the Netherlands into Belgium. That was about the 18th, 19th of December. On the 20th of December, they took my squad and they sent us to a little town called Malmedy, Belgium. And we were there to defend a key bridge, and there were only 7 of us. That afternoon, I heard an Army patrol come by, and I listened in. They talked to my company commander, and they said to him, "We have surveyed all the land out in the front of you, and the most you'll get down here is a few German stragglers. So you can just leave a squad to defend that bridge, and that'll do the trick." Well, that was in mid-afternoon, and we were right in front of a factory that was adjacent to this bridge. That factory was a U.S. Army hospital, Apparently that they had a little better intelligence than we did, because that afternoon they bugged out. They took all our patients, left everything, all their equipment, vehicles, anything there, which turned out to be very fortunate for us. Well, about 4 o'clock in the morning of the 21st of December, and I must say that when you read these citations, the Army has to compress them down into about 4 or 5 paragraphs. So you think it'd take a half hour. Actually, they don't. Most of them take at least 24 hours, which is the occasion of mine. Well, about 4 o'clock that morning, where the Germans didn't know it, but they were not supposed to be able to use armor. Here comes German armor, bumper to bumper. Okay. First thing that I knew, it was just breaking daylight. A German tank come barreling down the road to the bridge. He kind of slowed down when he hit the bridge. And I always remember to this day that he opened the turret and looked down at me. I had the Browning, I fired at him, and he closed up. He was the only German vehicle that got across that bridge that day. Over on the other side, he knocked out a couple of vehicles that another unit had, and they took care of him. And I learned later that the fellow who took him out with a bazooka into his gas tank got a Silver Star, and I think he really earned it. But to get back to us, the Germans were coming in. This tank, another tank came right up close to us and fired at us point blank. One of the men of my squad was right in direct line of that fire, and he got wounded terribly. Myself and another man of my squad, out of an abandoned vehicle from an anti-tank outfit in the front, managed to get a bazooka and the rocket for it. Now, the World War II bazooka only had a range of about 50 feet, so you had to get pretty close to the tank. So the two of us took this bazooka. He loaded it, I fired it. I could not, another 100 shots get such a good, that shot went in between the turret and the chassis. So it disabled the tank. They couldn't turn the turret. So they had to back on. At that point, myself and another member of the squad went out, picked up our wounded member of the squad, and carried him into the factory that had been a hospital just the day before, and did what we could he was totally unconscious. And I'm not going to mention his name because I have a reason for that, you will find. And that poor fellow laid there all day while we were fighting the Germans. The Germans were coming in waves like they're infantry. But the first level of this factory was all windows. And the 6 of us were running from window to window to window and firing at them and making our fire. Well, consequently, the Germans said, that's not very possible, and they pulled back because they thought there was a much larger force in that factory than what we were. Well, that went on for a few hours, back and forth, back and forth. And I don't, to this day, I really don't know why tactically. They pulled their infantry back, and they sent up three tanks. The tanks stopped out about maybe 100, 300 yards from us, and they just sat there. What happened was that we're stalemated, middle of the day, there was no action. So I tell the fools, hey, I'm going to go out there and see what's going on. And I did, And what happened was that the vehicle that was left with us was from an anti-tank crew that were out, and they moved their gun out in front of us, and then it was demolished. But 5 of them had been dug in beside this gun, and they were covered by them 3 tanks. I managed to get up close enough that I could talk to one of them, and I told him, hey, you can't move in them 3 tanks. I said, well, what did you guys leave on that half track? And he told me. So I got back to the half track, and I found a whole case of anti-tank grenades in there, and a launcher. So I did that. Now, for you fellows in infantry, World War II, in your basic, they taught you that anti-tank grenades would take out a tank. It won't. However, these grenades are like miniature bazookas, but when they hit the tank, there's a big flash of flame, a lot of smoke, and a lot of noise, and they don't know for what, the guys, and they abandoned them 3 tanks. Consequently, I got the 5 guys back. Okay, now the infantry is pulled back. Their 4 tanks are disabled. It's getting dark. Well, what are we going to do? Here are 6 of us. The biggest rank was a buck sergeant. The oldest one of the 6 of us was 21 years old. Well, what are we going to do? We have no officers. I had been to officers candidate school. I knew more about the Army than the other, because I knew how to use the weapons. They said, okay, you take over. Okay, well, we're going to get out of here, but we're not going to leave these 2 wounded men behind. No way. So we looked around, and in the courtyard of this factory, there's a Jeep. Now, any of you who ever seen the show MASH, they're going up to the helicopter for the wounded men with this Jeep, and it's got 2 stretcher mounts on it. That's what we found there. Okay. Now, what are we going to do? We got the 2 wounded. I said, okay. I just. You 4 guys will hold on them. The Jeep had a rear tire. I was a Browning automatic rifleman. I said, I will ride shotgun on the Jeep if we're challenged. Meanwhile, we are surrounded by Germans. I said, if we're challenged, I'll hop off and you guys just take off and I'll engage them and you guys go. We went past a German, there was a burning German tank. We were never challenged. Okay, at the time we had no idea where we were. You got 6 Americans, oldest 21, in rural Belgium, of all places, in the darkness, with a Jeep with all them little peep lights on it. Well, today I know where we were. We were on the main highway from Malmedy to Frankochamps, which is now the Belgian Grand Prix. But we did not appreciate that at the time. Okay, so we go on, we're going. Eventually we ran into a roadblock of another regiment of our. Incidentally, you're going to have to excuse my speech a little bit. I've had my minor stroke, and it does affect some of the words as I pronounce them. So, okay, so here is the problem. Here's a Jeep coming. We're coming from the German side. And so they challenged us, and a little back and forth. They finally let us in. First they took our weapons. they took our Jeep, our two wounded men, and nobody would believe us. No. As I remember the incident, I had already had three months of combat. And then this one kid, probably he's my age, and he had his hand on his head. And one thing I can remember in that room that night, I thought, for GD's sake, point that GD thing in another direction. And that was the way it went. So anyhow, we went from echelon to echelon, battalion, regiment, division. Nobody believed us. So finally, we got an intelligence officer and convinced him who we were right. The next morning, they managed to get us back to our regiment and back down, until back to our company, which had been pretty well decimated because a couple of the other platoons we had fought Germans in another area. We had really been on detached service up there to that bridge. But later on, I found the real tactical situation there. Why us? The object the Germans wanted was the main U.S. supply base in Liège, Belgium. And they wanted, there was an Autobahn from Germany that went through southern Belgium to Belgium. And there are two towns called Stoumont and Stavelot that they had to take to get on that Autobahn. And they rushed the whole regiment of my division in that area, and they couldn't break through. Stavelot in particular was a large village with narrow streets, and they could not move the tank. Joachim Pfeiffer, who was really one of their best German generals, was in charge of that operation. So what could they do? They regrouped, pulled back from Stoumont, Stavelot, and said, well, there's only one other place. We got to take that bridge up at Malmedy. So, unbeknownst to the Germans, they were not able to use armor up in that mountain area. But our intelligence didn't tell them that. So anyway, that's how we got hit with that first SS German Panzer Division. Consequently, the war went on. I became a platoon leader. We met the Russians up to Magdeburg in May 1945. Now, what reason I did not mention the name of the person in my squad who was so badly wounded that day, December 21st, 1944, is the fact that his name is Irving Kuskin, and he's here today.
Thank you very much. Frank is certainly a tough act to follow, but I'll do the best. First of all, I want to thank Frank for saving me. And what he didn't tell you is that before he did his heroics, he dressed my wounds and made me comfortable. Then he went out and did his thing. And not many people could do what he did. One of the reasons is that he knew with his training, he knew weapons that the average infantryman like myself didn't know. And he could handle the machine gun, the BAR. He was magnificent. But I really want to thank him for saving me, because one of the pluses is that my grandsons who are here with me. My 4 grandsons, will you please stand up? that's good. All right, that's enough. And that's a real plus, as every parent and grandparent knows. But I want to tell you something about Frank. Frank lost his parents before he was 12. And then he had to go with foster parents, and he acted as a farm boy. He had to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, do his farm work. Then he was tremendous. But more than that, he's so bright. After graduation, he enlisted in the Army, and he took the intelligence test, and he scored a 140, which is practically genius. And with that, he was able to go to officers' training school, and there he learned his weapons. And he could have been an officer, but because of his age, they didn't offer him his commission, which he was entitled to. But that was a break for me, because then he wound up in the K Company 120th and 3rd Platoon, and it was really some platoon. It was unusual. Oh yeah. Oh, he wants me to tell you about what happened on our first battlefield. The part of our group went to the airfield, and they had problems. We went into the village and fought there, and I tell you that they just surrendered. They wanted to give me the rifle, and Frank, we didn't. It made the battlefield so easy. I thought this was going to be so easy, but then came Malmedy, and Frank told you about Malmedy. But getting back to Frank, you sort of threw me off a little. The main thing is, I really don't have that much to say. I think I said it all. I want to pass it on to the next person. Thank you.